I want to talk about the newest stage of the implementation roadmap, something that I think it is a little bit challenging because people have varying understandings of assessment, varying interpretations of assessment. We all have, I think, bad experiences with being assessed, and but I think it's really important. I think it's really important to begin where you are, and beginning where you are really depends on understanding where you are and understanding your landscape. So I'm a big fan of assessment in whatever form it takes to create an understanding of your starting point and what directions you can move in, what options are available to you, where you should focus. And so I think that one of the things that is also really valuable about assessment is that it really helps us understand what's possible and where we are in relation to peers and folks that we look up to and examples that are set by others in our industry. So one of the things that I always really valued about DevOps Days was the opportunity to get together with other individual contributors and leaders and compare notes about where we were in our journey. And I think having a clear understanding of our present position and the challenges and opportunities that we had made those conversations very valuable and rich, and allowed us to kind of swap notes and really understand how to proceed most effectively. I also think that it's really important to track progress so that you can celebrate progress, right? It's very easy for us to get lost in doing things and not understanding whether we are stuck in the mud or running downhill. Like, there's all kinds of different ways that we can understand how to best proceed. But I think measuring is really the way that we do that most effectively. And so hopefully, that's something that we have facilitated with, our assessment that's based on the implementation roadmap that's provided through comparative agility is something that we put together for that purpose. That's something that all of you can take advantage of for free and use as a starting point or just a reference to understand where you are, where your teams are, where your customers are in relation to a full implementation or a prototypical implementation. And hopefully, start those conversations about where you are versus where you want to go. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the workshop. So we have Alexis and Christian coming up to help us walk through an interactive session on assessment. And they're all mic'd up and ready to go. So how fantastic.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Alexis Williams. I run the Global Strategic Program with Accenture here at Atlassian. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Helen and crew, for having us. So we're really excited to walk you through Assess. As Steve mentioned, this is new on the roadmap for the VSMC. And so the way that Christian and I really like to think about this particular phase is sort of baselining. And so we're going to walk you through an exercise. It's fun sort of game theme that we have. We want it to be as interactive as possible. One thing that we talk about in our partnership, because we do have a strategic partnership together, is how do we help companies become the best versions of themselves? And what I love about the VSMC's mission is really sparking joy and having teams really love the work they do. And so we just feel very aligned to the mission overall, and we're super excited to be here. So with that, we do have Slido. So if you pull up the QR code, we're going to ask some questions along the way. We'd love for you guys to put in your feedback. And let's get started. Anything you want to add, Christian?
Yeah, we're here to play a game. We're going to have fun this morning. We're going to interact. So interact with us. We have some snarky things to say, some good things to say. So let's play.
Yes. Oh, one other thing I should mention. So we have heard a lot around how do we actually move out of theory and into sort of practical calls to action. And so Christian and I created sort of this companion workbook, and we'll be back at our booth after our session. So we'd love for you all to pick up one at our booth afterwards. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Does everybody have the Slido?
I'm going to
working?
throw in a tiny disclaimer that this is my first time using Slido, so
So if we mess something up, it's going to be fine.
you
It's
can
Steve's fault.
all gasp and stare at me. So how I think this is going to go is that if you throw this up as we get to the poll stages of the presentation, you'll see these polls show up on the poll section of the site, so that you can fill in your input, and we'll see the results live if everything goes perfectly as I've hoped.
All right, here we go. Boom.
Stop zero. Okay, so stop zero is really, we're starting this Slido. Okay, so stop zero, there's 4 stops along the way. Stop zero is what we call our like pre-flight procedures, where like, let's check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, right? Are we aware personally of the value that BSM can bring, number one, and do we think our customers, or our company and our stakeholders are realistically ready? So this sort of just is helping us see where we are at as a team here.
So this one is, how ready do you feel you are to embrace value stream ways of working in your organization? We're baselining, we're starting.
Okay, so that brings us to our next. So now we all feel, what I'm seeing is, we mostly feel that our companies are cautiously optimistic, and we know and understand the value stream. So all's good there. Proceed to stop 1.
So stop 1. The way we think about this is, when Steve talked to us about assessing and this new part of the journey, our view was assessments can have a negative connotation. This is speaking from a guy who runs assessments as a consultant, and it can have a negative connotation of that you're going to get a PowerPoint at the end, and you're not going to get real value out of an assessment. And so how Alexis and I started thinking about it is like, okay, what should you be thinking about when you're assessing? And we came up with this idea. We both wear these Whoop things. Many of you either have Apple Watches or some kind of sports watch. Our thought process was baseline, that we should be thinking about baseline is measuring what we're doing so we can improve. So that was our first stop on the journey. But we want to hear from you. How would you frame it inside your organization, the need to assess? How are you framing it today with your stakeholders? How about your organizational stakeholders? Who are you engaging? Who are your organizational stakeholders in this? So you probably get the theme that we're asking you leading questions in these kinds of things. We have a perspective on this that from an assessment standpoint, cross-organizational sponsorship is absolutely required to be successful over time in VSM, because by nature it is a cross-functional, cross-organizational thing. Okay, so let's talk about failure modes. Assessments. If these things become a Bob's exercise, and that's from a 90s movie reference, what would you say you do here? If it becomes a Bob's exercise or part of a get well plan or something that is being done to the organization because of that kind of exercise, all the defenses go up in the org. You naturally have to do things that are cross-functional, and if assessment becomes a Bob exercise, we think that's a failure mode because it sets you off on the wrong start. So our view is assessment is baselining, knowing where we stand and where we're going to move forward from that. And anybody been through a Bob's exercise? That's Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's also really important to do the continuous baselining, right? You don't just baseline and stop. You should continuously be baselining.
Yeah, and that's why we asked the question, right? How much of it is part of a motion of continually improving your organization? Okay. So the next thing on our journey is really in the assessment process or the baselining process, defining what needs to change. Our view is that if you're doing it well, you're deeply understanding what needs to change across your organization, and you have your key stakeholders mapped, and you understand the WIFM. And what we mean by that is everybody has a WIFM, a what's in it for me, right? And a what's in it for my organization. And if those things need to be defined at the start when we're baselining. Do you want to talk about WIFM a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we spend a lot of time really trying to get to the heart of, because if you don't understand who you're talking to and what value means to them, they're not going to translate what you're trying to say. And so it's always important that you're capturing your stakeholders' care-abouts and really what is in it for them. So that's a big thing that we talk a lot about.
And we'll be super excited to hear Susan talk a lot about that later today. Okay, so we want to know what's your current level of stakeholder buy-in in your organization. Interesting. So right now, less than 20% of the folks in the room have, well, no, 22% have your stakeholders actively engaged, getting in, putting the hip waders on, getting in the muck with you. We find that that is typical of the start of these processes, right? Where you have skeptical leaders who are waiting to see outcomes. Let's talk about identifying what matters. What's the WIFM for your stakeholders? What are your top two with your stakeholders? What do they care about? Have we identified those things?
Customer value creation and organizational efficiency.
Somebody, 8% of you put not on this list. Somebody want to shout something that we missed? Yes. So changing to a mission-driven organization and linked to customer value creation, but changing to a mission-driven organization. That wasn't on this list. That's actually a really good one.
Yep.
So last question here. On your journey, what are you planning to do? Are you planning or doing these things right now as part of making your change, assessing what your change is? Obviously, we think all of these things are important for you to be doing in your journey at different stages of the journey. But let's talk about failure mode. Stole thunder from us, silos. Okay, so one of the biggest things that we see in organizations that people don't plan for is they don't plan for the idea that some leader in some part of the organization, their WIFM was not described. There's no future in their role or their world. At least that's what they think. And so they do the mine from the movie. They do, this is my empire and you're not touching my empire. So one of the key failure modes we see over and over and over again is not defining that WIFM and not defining a path forward for your leaders and stakeholders in an organization, and then they block you. That happens over and over and over again. Does that resonate with anybody? Does that, couple hands? Yeah. Okay. All right, so then the next thing we think about is defining the systems for value stream in your organization. And we contemplated the idea of tooling, process, people, all of that as a system, and that needs to be defined, picked apart, and put into, we have a backpack reference here, put in your backpack for your journey. So we have a couple questions for you here. Well, there's another backpack, but we're gonna move on. So as part of your backpack, what methods, tools, processes are you putting in your backpack for your journey of these? Say that again. Primary and secondary. So primary is getting in like a Gamba walk and in the muck with your customers, directly with them. Secondary is understanding publish research on human behaviors or publish research on your industry or your customer needs. So as you baseline, are you considering these things? Okay, so clearly we put these things up here because we believe that as you baseline, all of these things are important to be driving. But it seems like folks are choosing value delivered to customer. Clearly, that's an important one. So let's talk about failure mode here. Failure mode here in our perspective is going into a value stream journey without having any systems, processes, or tools to measure what you're actually doing. I have been involved personally in value stream motions where you bring a whole bunch of people together, you pinpoint and process decomp the whole thing. You do all the stickies and all the notes, and you see all of the gray areas, all the white space between things. And then everybody bounces, they go back to their day job, and nothing ever happens with that other than people take pictures of the wall, right? Because nobody, in those instances, nobody instrumented the artifacts actually going from pictures on the wall to work that needs to be done in some, in some tracking system, value that we expect to create by going through the exercise, right? And then people assigned to things. And then worse, I've seen a ton of times where people don't move beyond process decomposition. So I have a process that's typically a 3-letter acronym. It goes from here to here, and I want to create a value stream out of that process. The companies that are doing this the best right now are actually moving on to being very customer-centric, like you said back there, and working through customer journeys, getting primary and secondary research on internal customers and external customers. So thinking about like my marketing team is now my customer, and I actually need to understand what's going on in marketing, not the proverbial Office Space, another reference from that. Like I take the requirements, I actually have my EA take the requirements to the team, the engineering team. It's like actually getting in and understanding internal and external customers. So our viewpoint in here is if you're gonna baseline, you gotta go down that path and know all of those things that you put in your backpack, all the tools and methods that allow you to get more customer-centric. You also gotta get to understanding how you're gonna measure your success as you move forward. And that's building the systems. Helen, we were talking a lot about the systems of accountability, the systems of repeatability in the work that you're doing as you move to value streams. And it becomes even more important because you have a cross-functional nature of your teams working together. More important to manage that stuff.
All right, so I think we're at time, but really enjoyed sharing our perspective with you. And Steve, we will turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you.